Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to deliver this talk. And I am also invited by the Society for Failure Analysis, who is one of the sponsors for this conference to deliver this lecture. So I have come on 2 invitations, and I hope I would do justice for the 2 invitations what I got. Now I am from the Department of Atomic Energy, but we have some experience and expertise in the area of non-destructive evaluation and also the failure analysis. So combining this and based on the work what we had carried out for the Indian defense platforms, I have knitted this work which would give you a few case studies representing the failure analysis, and based on that, how do you introduce non-destructive evaluation techniques to prevent such failures. So I hope that at the end I would try to demonstrate this in a convincing manner. Now if you see here, our experience encompasses almost all types of aircrafts in the Indian defense platforms, including the Navy and also the military aircrafts. But I have only taken a few examples within the limited time available, and I will try to illustrate that how we go about with respect to failure analysis or life extension of the defense aircrafts, and then how in an organized way, combining the experience of different organizations, we go about in a successful manner, and then we have completed many life extension programs as part of this process. And obviously we try to identify the failures or the life limiting or critical components, while the OEMs provide a certain maintenance or the inspection methodologies. When it comes to the life extension, we need to add additional inspections or additional critical components, and then you have to go about how do you do the inspection and then qualify for the life extension. And this is done jointly by the defense wing, the HAL, NAL, CEMILAC, and centers like us who join together based on the combined wisdom and complementary expertise. So we do the root cause analysis of the failures and develop the relevant ND techniques and the calibration procedures. Then subsequently we demonstrate on actual components, and then we also train the defense personnel to take care of the further inspection of these either additional components or sometimes the same components with enhanced sensitivity and reliability. And then finally we also recommend some new equipment to be purchased so that the inspection wing has state-of-the-art systems. And sum total, we try to avoid the failures or catastrophic incidents. So I try to cover some of these things where we have used enhanced inspection techniques for compressor discs to avoid failures, and also airframe rivet joints. Then the fatigue damage of the undercarriages with respect to the residual stress measurements and life extension and the regeneration process qualification, and also certain failures of the wheel axles, turbine blades, and also the fuselage components with respect to the exfoliation corrosion. So I have taken few case studies to demonstrate. Now if you take this is a classic study where the damage tolerance, mean time between inspections, and the failure prevention, and sometimes preventing the catastrophic accidents is demonstrated. And Professor Bowler also was talking about the inspection intervals damage tolerance. Now what happened is, this is the aero engine compressor disc all of us see, and then such failures have taken place in India. Sometime back, large number of failures were there. So once we started analyzing this, what we have identified is that the inspection procedure given by the OEM would be able to detect a surface crack length of around 4 millimeters. Now if a crack is of 3.5 millimeters is missed when you do one inspection, then when the mean next time when you do the inspection, this crack would have grown to the critical crack length, and then the catastrophic failures have taken place. So what was the solution is, either you reduce the mean time between inspections, then which will increase the downtime of the aircraft, or you try to enhance the sensitivity of the defect detection so that you will get a you will detect a smaller size defect. So for the same interval, the crack will not go to critical before you do the next inspection. So that's exactly what we did is we have developed an advanced eddy current based technique where we are not able to detect a 4 mm surface equivalent crack, but a natural 2 mm surface crack which is available in a few of the compressor discs. We are able to detect with very high sensitivity by using a multi-frequency based eddy current testing. So once we have introduced this enhanced sensitivity based inspection procedure, we did not have any failures in these compressor discs, but maintaining the same inspection interval. Now this is with respect to the aircraft undercarriages, where you introduce very high compressive stresses into the undercarriages on the surface to enhance the fatigue life. So when the aircraft is landing, some of the regions will see the compressive stresses and some regions will see the tensile stresses. So if you can introduce compressive stresses, then what happens is the tensile stresses balance the compressive stresses, and the net result is that the fatigue damage will not take place till certain number of landings. But subsequently the compressive stresses get redistributed and then they become tensile, a crack can initiate and then the failure can take place. So what is done is that we did a systematic investigation with respect to the stress critical parts using the FEM analysis, and then these regions, the original compressive stresses what you have is around 550 megapascals of compressive stress, and with number of landings we took the landing gears at periodic intervals, and then you can see that the compressive residual stresses slowly change to tensile after a certain number of landings, and once the compressive stresses change to the tensile, then superimposed operating tensile stresses will exceed the fatigue limit and then crack can initiate. And these fatigue damage also would confine to the top surface of around 300 microns, because if you take a life expired landing gear and then you remove the layer by layer and then make the residual stress measurements, by the time you come to 300 microns, you will see the original high compressive stresses. So the fatigue damage is to the top 200 to 300 microns, and also this fatigue damage accumulates over a period of number of landings. So you have two options. Either after the 1500 landings, you should replace this landing carriage, or what you have to do is that there is a procedure given where the stress critical regions you have to scoop out the material and then do a re-short peening treatment, because in the design the OEM has allowed 1 millimeter of extra thickness for these landing gears in the stress critical regions. So you can do 2 times of regeneration, and then you can, instead of leaving rejecting the aircraft of landing gear after 1500 hours, you can extend the life to 3000 hours. So what we did is we jointly worked with HAL and the Indian Air Force, and then we developed the residual stress measurement using the X-ray diffraction based portable system which we have used, and then we have established that the fatigue damage is only up to 300 microns. And then what we did is that we had gone through the regeneration process. The HAL has developed the regeneration process. We have also qualified the regeneration process, and the regenerated landing gears also have been inspected periodically to ensure that the process is qualified, and now the landing gears are used for longer life. In the process, we have saved quite a good amount of foreign exchange otherwise required for buying the new landing gears. If you see here, you can also see that depending upon the different locations, for example, in the location 1 where the stress concentration is more, the fatigue damage accumulation will be faster. That means the stresses, reduction in the compressive stresses takes place faster compared to the another location. So there is a 1-to-1 correspondence between the FEM based stress analysis and expected fatigue damage and the experimentally observed fatigue damage in different landing gears which have seen different landings. And this also has been confirmed in the same landing gears repeatedly we got after the utilization, and then we measured the residual stress measurements after 1000 landings, after 1500 landings, and then we can see that the fatigue damage, how it is progressing, and then to see that when you have to regenerate or replace. Particularly in India, some of the landing areas are short landings are there, or sometimes there will be a forced landing. So the damage accumulation, either it will be it will be faster. So we should know a priori that we have done a forced landing and then its implication on the residual stress redistribution, and then you may have to reduce the number of landings to be given for the landing gears where you have the short runway for the landing in some of the aircraft Air Force stations. This is an example of, again, large number of failures have taken place in wheel axles of one of the fighter aircrafts. And then here what we have observed is that between the wheel and the cylinder there was a more gap compared to what is allowed. Large clearance was there, leading to a low cycle type of fatigue damage where you can see the striation region with crack initiation, subsequently the crack propagation region. Now what we wanted is that we wanted to see that in the other aircrafts also we wanted to ensure that such type of failure is not initiated. So we have to develop an NDT procedure where without dismantling the wheel axle we should be able to inspect. So we developed a specific angle beam ultrasonic examination procedure where without dismantling we would be able to detect the initiation of this crack with required sensitivity, and then we have introduced this technique, and then we checked all the wheel axles of corresponding aircraft, and then in fact we have seen in few of the wheel axles the crack initiation, and then we have replaced them, and also we have ensured that the improved tolerance specifications are given for the wheel and axle, and subsequently these failures again have come down. These are the cracks which have been taken at it's a reference defects for standardizing the procedure, and if you see 14 and depending upon the landings also you can see that 40 mm crack, 52 mm crack, like that you have a large surface length cracks are there which are missed, these are not inspected. So we have to develop a technique where we could do without dismantling, and then you can do in the in situ. So that also has been done. This is a case of a failure as it has happened because of the over temperature exposure due to faulty temperature indicator. What happened is that there is a catastrophic failure of the engine, and then when we had opened and then seen all the blades have failed, and then when we did the investigation, what we have observed is that the coarsening of the gamma prime and also the creep rods at the grain boundaries, indicating that the blades have seen higher temperature, because the gamma prime coarsening or the reduction in the gamma prime indicates that high temperature and dissolution of these intermetallic precipitates, which would give a lot of strength, and also the intergranular cracking of the blades, that is the grain boundary cracking, which is again related to the creep crack growth. And then the coating itself got spalled. The coating which is given for thermal barrier coating also has spalled. So all these things led to the failure. Now what is the solution if you want to ensure that there is such a high temperature exposure is there, and then you want to know that the early stage of the creep damage before the blades fail in a catastrophic manner. So what we did is that we developed an ultrasonic based procedure where the ultrasonic velocity is a function of the volume fraction of the gamma prime. Now this is the gamma prime which you can see only by electron microscopy. Now if you see here, with the increase in the volume fraction, the longitudinal velocity increases. Now what you have to do is that you have to make the measurement of the velocity in these blades. Particularly it is known that particularly what happens is that if the gamma prime goes into solution because of the higher temperature or the creep cavities come in both cases the velocity comes down. So what you have to do is that the highest creep damage region is 1/3 from the aerofoil region of the blade. So you have to do the ultrasonic inspection in that region. The velocity measurements are to be made in that region, so that if there is any reduction in the velocity, that indicates that creep damage is set in, and then you can take care of that. And this is another blade failure where this has taken place because of the hot corrosion. So here you can see that very clearly a gamma prime denuded region, and also there is a grain boundary cracking, and then if you see at a higher magnification you can see the grain boundary cracking. Now once we did the full investigation, we have found that the fuel has higher sulfur, and also these aircraft was operating in saline environment. The sulfur and also the sodium, either from the fuel we did not see. So the saline environment where the aircraft was operating, so this led to the hot corrosion leading to the failure. So we have to ensure that the fuel quality is absolutely clean with respect to the sulfur content if you want to avoid the hot corrosion. Now this is a exfoliation corrosion which has been seen in one of the transport aircrafts in the fuselage region, and then we have again did the investigation why this has taken place, and then we found that the skin, the aluminum alloy which has been used is of inferior quality. It has not gone through a proper heat treatment, and then the exfoliation through the intergranular corrosion, we have in fact seen the delamination and also the copper precipitation which comes out of the intergranular corrosion, and then the layer by layer removal of the material, and then we could prove that this is by exfoliation, and then we have to remove this skin, and also you have to do the proper painting and cleanliness of the surface to ensure that the intergranular corrosion through the exfoliation process doesn't take place. Now this is another case where there were accidents with respect to the rivet failures in a catastrophic manner, and then we were asked to develop suitable NDT technique for finding the rivet cracks, and also if there is a corrosion takes place, then we also should be able to know whether there are only the petty cracks or there is a corrosion associated with it, because once the rivet gets loosened, the moisture can enter and then there can be a corrosion. So what we did is that we took the calibration panels, and then we have introduced different grooves in these rivets before riveting them into the calibration specimens, and also some of these grooves have filled with the aluminum oxide, the corrosion product which has been taken from actual aircraft corroded rivets, and then we have filled those products, and then we did a neutron radiography, because neutron radiography will give you the corrosion product which has mixed with araldite very clearly, to ensure that we have in fact the rivets with cracks and also the rivets with cracks filled with the oxide corrosion product, and then we did use this panel with full quantification to establish an eddy current based, in fact this is a failed aircraft structure where neutron radiography has been done. You can see the corrosion products, you can also see the rivet corrosion which is taking place here. So this can come out very clearly by using neutron radiography using a reactor based system. But this is only for the calibration purpose, but the actual inspection, So I think I missed one slide. So back is not going. The actual inspection, the button is problem, this PC is having problem. Next one. Okay. Previous one. Okay. So what we did is that we have done a eddy current based technique where we could make an excellent relation between volume fraction of the rivet material loss with respect to the eddy current signal. So that has indicated that what is the rivet corrosion loss that has taken place, and then we could inspect the rivets, and then we could establish that the rivets have corrosion or not as a no-go basis, and then that also has been implemented. Now this is with respect to the light combat aircraft, the internally cooled blade development that is taken up at DMRL. Now if you see that this is a very good blade where the ceramic core is completely leached out, whereas here you can see that the ceramic core is still present. Now if this core is there, then during the engine operation, this will be a hot spot, and then the blade can prematurely fail. So as part of the engine blade development program, we have developed the neutron radiography based inspection, because the ceramic core, if you use the conventional X-ray, the sensitivity will be very less for detection of this ceramic core, because the absorption of the X-rays in the nickel based alloy is much more compared to the ceramic core, and you won't get the contrast, whereas neutrons would have a very high contrast. Ceramic would have a very high absorption compared to the steel or the nickel based alloy, so you could get a very good contrast. So for qualifying these blades that no residual core is left out, the neutron radiography based inspection is done for qualifying these blades. Now this is a missile casing. What happened is that when the material is imported during the high seas, the seawater entered, and then there was concern with respect to the seawater based corrosion of this casing material. But the casing material has been used for fabrication, and then casings have been made. And then what was required is that even if a small amount of corrosion is there, whether the casings would withstand the pressure test so that these can be used for the missiles. So what we did is that we did the acoustic emission testing as part of the hydro test, and then we qualified these missile casings that the corrosion is not of a concern. But what I would like to show a more important information is that this is a 3-segment casing, and then the 3 segments are joined by a joint configuration with a tight dovetail pin. Now what is, when the vessel is hydro tested, so the expansion of the vessel takes place, and then there would be tightening of this rivet, because the hole gets contracted, and then there will be a tightening, so that way the leak tightness is achieved. Now the designers have a criterion that the closure should take place at a particular pressure range. In fact, when we did the acoustic emission monitoring, you can see that when the pressure is in the range where the designers expect that this should get closed, you can see the very high emission. Once the pin gets closed, you see that the emission is reduced. So that means it is also giving an indirect qualification that the rivet machining, everything has been done properly, and the closure of the gap takes place, and the leak tightness achieved at the appropriate pressure level. So sometimes you can use the NDT techniques for qualifying such type of design. The final example what I would give is that there were also some catastrophic failures with respect to the canopy flying off. This is essentially because of the aging induced degradation of the glue, and then the canopy cloth and the perspex get separated, and then the canopy flies off. So what we were asked is that we can develop any suitable NDT techniques for finding the glue quality and also the aging induced degradation of the glue quality. So what we did is that we used the thermal imaging and radiography based techniques, and then with respect to the glue content, the thermal imaging would give a very good sensitivity, in the sense that any glue less quantity of 25% would be easily detected by infrared thermal imaging. So you would qualify to start with enough glue is there after the bonding has taken place, and then it would have a longer life. But for example, if you have the glue has certain porosity which can become a weak spot, then the porosity detection is much better with radiography compared to the infrared thermal imaging. Similarly, we also did simulated aging treatment after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years equivalent of aging degradation. And if you see the thermal imaging, the decay pattern will indicate that when the aging is taking place and degradation takes place, the thermal decay would be very fast, and then the slope of the curve, how the temperature is dropping after giving a stimulus to this joint, will indicate the extent of degradation. And this also has been established using 2 techniques for qualifying the glue bonding. And subsequently, we have also identified various advanced techniques for inspection of various components, be it engine related or structure related or landing gear related to ensure that very high integrity for these aircrafts. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jay Kumar.